Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to Conscious 2. My guest in the studio today is Mark Walsh. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
And Mark is the founder of the Embodied Facilitator course, director of integration training, and works around the world with people from in corporate world, war zones, and really many different contexts. And in today's interview, we're going to explore the body, embodiment, and consciousness. So, Mark, maybe as a starting point, it may sound like a silly question, but I think it's a pretty important question. Why is the body important?
Good question. So, for most people, the body is something like a brain taxi, as my colleague Francis Bryce likes to say. It's a head on a stick. This is basically how our culture is. There's various historical reasons why that's become the case. So for most people would view the body as something that moves them around, them being separate from the body. The body is generally reduced to a lump of flesh, a thing, a machine. So the objectified view of the body is the common one that's normal in our society. There's other ways of looking at the body, however. So we can look at the body, the subjective experience of the body. This is a somatic view of the body. So the body as who we are, the body as how we are. So sometimes when I work with tech companies, I say the body is like your operating system. It is intimately involved with how we think, how we see, how we feel, relate. Everything we do in our lives, the body is always there. It's a huge part of who we are and how we are. So it's important on pretty much everything we do is involving the body. We are embodied, meaning not just body language, not just body as a thing, but the fact that as people, our embodiment, our posture, our breathing, our movement is absolutely key to who we are. And just to be clear, I don't mean if we're tall or short or fat or thin. I mean how we live in our bodies, our awareness, also how we take up space. There's a teacher called Stuart Heller that says we move through space like we move through life. For me, that beautifully captures the art of what embodiment's about, and equally how we sit. So right now I'm sitting. Now, if this was just physics and biology, I'd be sitting in a way which would perfectly balancing those forces. No one sits like that, though. You don't sit like that, I don't sit like that, no one does. Because the body isn't just about biology and physics, it's about psychology. I'm expressing who I am. More than that, I'm creating who I am. So this would be the difference with body language, right? Like we all know that body language, but it's a bit deeper than that. I'm structuring myself right now. The self is an embodied experience. So how I sit creates a large amount of my experience, how I perceive, how we relate, what kind of thoughts I'm coming up with now. So if I sit differently or walk differently or even breathe differently, that's going to change all of those things, and therefore every area of my life.
Yeah.
Somewhat long-winded answer.
Yeah, and of course, for a lot of people, they spend their life pretty disassociated from their body, like it's a kind of functional machine, but they're not in it, in a sense. Yeah. Would you see it like that?
Yeah, and sadly, I see myself breathing out like that, sadly that's the experience of most people in the modern world, and it's deliberately so. People are kept disembodied through technology, through industrialization. There's various historical forces. Some of the major religions certainly didn't want people in their bodies. So there's these kind of reasons why people are kept not in their bodies. This is our basic authority. If we're feeling our body, if we're in touch with that, we're in touch with what we really care about, not what we're told by the adverts or the TV to care about.
Yes.
Yeah. If we can actually relate and connect to each other through the body, which is the only way to relate and connect actually, sure, as human beings, then we won't be looking for other external things to meet that need. Most people are disassociated from their body. Obviously, trauma is another big one there, which
sure,
is incredibly common. Even in the UK, and certainly some of the places I work, is even more common. And that's another disembodying force. The body stops. We kind of lose the home of the body. In the case of trauma, it's because it's too much. The feelings there are too unpleasant, so there's a numbing, there's a dissociation. But that's, in many ways, that's just the norm in Western society, is to be disembodied. Yes. So, in many ways, what I do is countercultural and a little revolutionary in that sense, because it highlights some of the big problems in the world today, and also offers kind of personal ways of working with some of these that don't involve buying more stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, we are
which
disembodied.
often isn't a very effective solution.
No. And I've tried some of the other solutions, you know.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, actually. I was curious as to a little bit about your own kind of journey to this kind of work. Because
Yeah,
I know that you've kind of studied many things, but you've also developed your own voice within that. And I'm just curious as to what brought you to having such a fascination with the body in this work.
Yeah. Well, naturally, I'm a very cerebral, cognitive person. When I was a kid, I was very bright, according to the limited definition of the education system. My parents were teachers, you know, I'm a third-generation teacher, and I was told, you know, be bright, be clever, pass tests, that kind of thing. And I was great at that. I was, you know, like a child genius, you know, top 1.1% IQ. And that was great at passing exams. But then I got to my teenage years, and I found myself suicidal, alcoholic, broken-hearted, unable to pass my driving test, which might seem like a small thing, but it highlighted the fact that all these other, you know, young people were passing their driving tests.
Right.
And I thought, well, I'm supposed to be clever, and here I am. I'm fucking a mess physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I'm, you know, heartbroken. I completely fell out of love and just wrecked my first ever kind of meaningful relationship. And you know, so basically, failure is the answer to your question. Being a failure, and going, well, if I'm so smart, why am I failing? And then I went to university. By that point, I'd read all the books in the sort of library in sixth form, and was just sort of bored of books, really. And I went to university to study psychology because I thought that would be about people. But when I was there, I started doing Aikido. The main reason was I was selling drugs, and I thought this would be helpful to defend myself. Yeah, didn't expect that, did you? Yeah,
I didn't expect that at all, no.
That. If my mum's watching this, I'm in so much trouble.
What can I say? Your mum and my mum are probably not our biggest
probably
viewers,
not
but
watching. My sister might be like, okay. So that was one reason. But I think on a sort of another level, I walked into an Aikido dojo, and I saw something beautiful. I saw something that I knew I needed and, you know, deeply yearned for.
Yes.
And
interesting that you chose Aikido over something perhaps a more aggressive form of martial arts.
Yeah, well, I've got two sides. There's the part of me that just wants to burn everything, and there's the part of me that's a big hippie and kind of wants to love everything. And, you know, trying to figure those two together has been a life's journey. But Aikido really opened the door.
Yes.
You know, I was learning way more about people and about myself doing Aikido than I was studying psychology.
Interesting. And
the joke was, you know, I did a exam on stress, and I'm in the exam, and I'm stressed, and I've got no tools from the books to figure out, work with the stress, right? Yeah. And, you know, like, why hasn't Wikipedia solved all the world's problems? Well, because information isn't enough. Like, just watching this video, that's not enough. That's not going to really help people. It might inspire them. It might give them a start.
Great, open a door, but something else has to happen.
Exactly. They need to practice something. And so in this exam on stress, when I was stressed, I did a little breathing technique, a little centering technique from Aikido, something I still use today. And it was like, oh, this actually works. So not only am I learning about myself, but it's very pragmatic in a way that sort of reading lots of books about stress, you know, it's a different kind of knowing, and this is really the heart of embodiment, is that in the Western world we've really confused learning about things with learning.
Yes.
So if I'm in business, they're not so interested in, you know, everyone can tell them about leadership. We all want to know, you know, what virtues should a leader have? And you can say, well, you should be this, and you should be that. You should be brave, and should be, you know, humble, and, you know, blah, 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 yeah? But that's just talking about or learning about leadership. Everyone's, you know, you've all read the fucking books, haven't we? You know, everybody's read the books. One of my teachers calls them shelf help. You know, they sit on the shelf. Yeah.
A little bit of shelf help over here for
aesthetic reasons. Yeah, and the books are great. You know, I like books. You know, but it's they're not really going to help. Right. Yeah, and it's. Or if I said to you, Alex, can I give you a lift afterwards across London? I know you need to go across London afterwards. Can I give you a lift? And I've read a lot of books about driving. What would you say? You'd say, well, you know, no thanks. I'd probably say thanks, but no thanks. Right? But
I'm wondering if I imagine in that exam on stress, if you'd written about what was actually helping you, you probably would have failed the exam.
Well, that's interesting. Actually, I did hand in a haiku for one of my psychology exams and did fail it. You know, performative dance doesn't tend to pass the exam.
I studied psychology at university as well. I had a very similar experience. So I really appreciate what you're saying.
Aikido just opened into everything else, and I started studying yoga and meditation and dance and emotional intelligence, and, you know, embodied psychotherapies and all these different systems. And I guess what I do today is apply them in a very pragmatic way.
Yes.
So my niche is taking kind of hippie stuff and doing it with non-hippie people. So I'm taking stuff from, you know, martial arts and yoga and meditation, and doing that with police or big business or military. Yes. People really where, you know, there's a lack of tolerance for fluff. There's a lack of tolerance for fantasy.
And effectively, you're not just preaching to the choir. You're actually taking it out into the places where it's really needed in the world.
Yeah, well, partly I just do it for the money. It's nice. But partly...
I suspect that's not the real reason.
It's a good part of it. It's a good part of it. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. We want to help the world, but it's also,
got to pay the bills to keep the lights on. Yeah.
I try and make a balance. So I was working with... last week, for example, nice company, nice people, very elegant in France, and good.
You'd hope so.
And they are lovely, and big companies, big business. But also, I'm doing stuff in war zones, in conflict zones around the body and peace. We'll talk about that, I think, in
it's a separate interview.
Yeah, and I'm also just training a lot of trainers and coaches because it tends to be the people that work with the body. There's a tradition of sort of a guru who kind of doesn't really want you to learn what they know. And what I've really enjoyed doing with my colleagues is making a very pragmatic way of learning about the body, so that you can then translate that, if you're a therapist or a coach or a trainer, into sort of very practical tools that people can use.
And can you say a little bit about what some of those practical tools look like? Or if I was to be working at L'Oreal and you turn up looking very, very glamorous to teach us about the body, what would happen? Like, what would be some of the ways that you do that?
So I think if we first of all, we need to sort of map the area we're talking about, right? So we could think of embodied intelligence. If you take a kind of multiple intelligence view, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, cognitive intelligence, then embodied intelligence, and probably one of the first people to sort of map what that actually means in non-kind of abstract terms.
Yes.
If you're aware of Daniel Goleman's model of emotional intelligence, we basically stole that and put the word body in front of it.
Very good.
And so body awareness would be the first foundation. So without that, you can't do anything else, because we have to know what we're doing to do anything different, right? So I have to be aware of how I'm sitting or breathing or moving before I could choose to do something different. This is any personal development course is based on that, awareness and choice. Yeah. So there's the awareness part, so there's awareness of me, and there's awareness of others. So there's looking at other people. It's not just a kind of analysing, but more of a... This is a nightmare, by the way, when I go on dates and I tell people this is what I do, and they kind of freeze. But,
it's like going on a date and saying you've done a psychology degree. Can you read my mind?
Yeah.
I'm like, I wish I could. Nothing I learned on my degree that helped me do that.
No, it didn't. Doesn't help at all, does it? But in this, one of my ex-girlfriends used to call me the people whisperer, because I sort of
interesting.
Tune into her a little bit and know something's up, but with permission and consent.
Sure.
So there's awareness of self, then awareness of others, social awareness, and the body just expresses how we are. It's, in a way, this isn't like some special skill. Like a little kid gets this. A little kid will come up to me at a wedding and want to play with me, and I'll be doing my best, like serious face, but they'll know that I'll play with them because they can tell that I'm playful. That's in my body somehow. And a dog will, if you're in the dog whisperer, a dog will know if you're dominant or not. So that very basic level of bodily communication is just always happening.
Yes.
Like we're both speaking right now. We're both, on my workshops, I say to people, okay, everybody touch your knees, and everybody touches their elbows, like 90%. Why? Because they're looking more at the body than at the words, right? So it's more primal. It goes back to when we're kids, when we're animals. So there's aware of self, aware of other, and then there's management, regulation. So there's self-regulation. So centering is a bit of a bucket term that's used in my field, and we've got really neurotic about exactly what that is. So being able to regulate oneself in different directions. So, I don't say you should sit in a perfect way, but, I might deliberately go, okay, I'm speaking quite quickly, I might want to relax. It could be as simple as that. I'm regulating my state. Or I might want to sit forwards, or I might want to breathe more into the belly or more into the chest. You'll hear really bad instructions in most yoga classes, like take a deep breath. And it's like, well, how? This way, how do you want the rhythm to be? There's a lot of variables there. They can have opposite effects. We wake up, or...
It's kind of different experience, right?
Completely different effects.
Yeah.
So being able to influence oneself through these kind of simple techniques, and there's a range of kind of 8 different tools we teach, which again is quite unusual to teach the full range. Normally people get a bit obsessed with movement or posture or awareness, and they sort of focus on one area, whereas I find different things work for different people. Like for someone, I might say, visualize that your legs are like a tree with roots going into the ground. And some people will go, great, and they'll find that really helpful. Whereas other people will go, what are you on about?
Yeah.
They'll just find that totally unhelpful. So you need a range of tools to influence yourself, and then the last part of the kind of tool set would be influencing others. So it's, can I inspire you? Like, often I'm working in business with managers, and I get given a middle management team or a young up and coming management team, and they're either annoying everybody or they're just a bit dull. When we're not in our bodies, we're not very inspiring.
Right.
Like, hello, my name is Mark, I'm a talking head.
Yeah.
That's very different from being, and this isn't about faking it, it's just feeling the body, expressing the body, yes, influencing yourself, and then through that being able to inspire, being able to, it might be turning someone on.
Yes.
That might be another application that I don't usually get paid for.
That's where it is helpful in the dating world.
Absolutely. So, you ask a woman who's sexier for a man. Is it someone that's, calm, relaxed, certain in their body, has that presence in their body? Equally, who do I find more attractive in women? Is it women who are emotionally expressive and have flow and have openness and have feeling? I mean, I'm turning myself on a little bit, just experiencing it.
There you go.
And that sexual kind of presence. It's also to do with polarity.
Yes.
So I'm a particular embodied type. I have more of a yang kind of tendency. So I tend to be attracted to both business and romantic partners that are more kind of open, soft, more yin.
Which then contrasts with that.
Yeah, you get a nice. This is when people get on. It's usually because there's an embodied kind of relationship that happens, and when they don't get on, that's where developing range is helpful.
Yes.
So if we were working with a simple model like a 4 elements model, you can be more earthy, you can be more watery, you can be more airy, more fiery. If you're working with that, then I might have my tendencies towards air and fire, but I've also developed some range through this.
Yes.
So in different, if I'm sitting down to do my taxes, I want to be a bit more earth. If my friend's really upset and I want to really listen to her, actually slipping into that slightly more watery, open, kind of receptive body is going to be really helpful in that situation.
Yes.
So this range of embodied range is really important, both in the short term and also in the long term, and that's where practice comes in.
Yeah, I want to come back to that in a second. Just something I wanted to just pick up on as well. You mentioned trauma a little bit earlier, and I'm mindful, and I could put this a little bit in my own kind of personal experience, that I spent the first few decades of my life just not in my body. And the part of the reason was when I came into my body, I started to feel all these things I didn't know how to deal with and how to feel. Yeah. So the way I dealt with that was kind of by being slightly depersonalized and kind of being kind of up there the whole time. And I was just wondering, in the work that you do, what you see that helps people actually come more in contact with their body when there is that kind of trauma, and it may not be kind of, massive trauma, but the more kind of subtle kind of not being held and supported in the ways we need as a young child, therefore we don't feel safe in the world.
Yeah.
Anything you can say that helps us just kind of land a bit more?
Well, there's always history to someone's embodiment, right? Like at some point, what they were doing worked for them. So, when I look at a body, I'm looking at history. I'm looking at how that person's learned to get love and safety and belonging and learn to stay safe. And that might be shaping themselves in a particular way. Like, fuck you, I'm Mark Walsh. Sure, it might be, that's one of my favorites. Or it might be, or it might be, it might be like really nice and sort of making oneself very amenable.
Yes.
Both of which could cause problems,
Sure.
right? Too much no, too much yes, just this very simple polarity.
Yeah.
So we form ourselves around our life situations to do the best we can. And, a therapist can go into that, and that's great. Personally, I don't with clients. I just sort of say, well, I get that it comes from somewhere, and, that was the best you could do at the time. Now, do you want to see what else is possible? And you always keep your, people don't just remove their embodied tendencies. With disembodiment, the good news, I guess, is that no one's completely disembodied. If I gave you a kick right now, no matter how disembodied you are, you'd feel it, right?
Yeah, I'll probably kick you back,
Yeah. And that's an embodied tendency, whether you kick back or whether you'd run away, right? Fight or flight. So that tendency is in the body.
Yes.
So it's no one's completely disembodied, but sadly it is totally common in the world today. That just feeling London, being outside in London is just fucking hell, it's a bit much. So I could see why you wouldn't want to feel that, as and also, walking by a homeless guy in Brighton or turning on the TV and seeing the latest, atrocities, corporate-sponsored war, it's that's painful.
Sure.
And so I get why people might not want to do that. That's where I think, care comes in. Consent is massive in terms of how you do this with people. Also helping people self-regulate. So the centering techniques, for example, like deep belly breathing, or people call them grounding or whatever. Learning those early in a training is pretty important for me.
Yes.
Because that way, if someone does have something start to come up, then it's they're able to self-regulate and self-manage.
Yes.
So the body stops being overwhelming the building that muscle of being able to stay present and choose to regulate.
Yes.
It doesn't mean becoming a robot. You know, if people do lots of martial arts, sometimes they become very kind of like very centered, but not very expressive.
Kind of rigidly centered.
Yeah. And there's not much flow there,
Yes.
because it's kind of a way of controlling themselves. This is why I think you need multiple embodied practices as you develop.
Yeah.
Like the martial artists are kind of really centered and together usually. And like they say, the dancers, like the fire rhythms people, they're really expressive and emotional, but they're not necessarily that good at like turning up on time or having boundaries or having their shit together. We're going to get complaints from all the dancers. And I love dancing and I love martial arts, right? Yeah. But they're different practices that build different things. I get it. So if I'm working with a client long term, I can't say, oh, you should do yoga. I mean, even that, it's like, what kind of yoga? How are you going to do it? What's the teacher like? You know, you can do yoga in all of the 4 elements, for example, to stay with that model. But different practices suit different people and what they need as they develop, and sometimes practices are just for the joy of it. You know, like I lift weights, and it's not because I need to develop the part of my character of that. It's just for the joy of full expression.
Right.
And then there's other things that I do are much more challenging for me, that, you know, slowing down and softening. And you know, that those are for my kind of building my range, building my development.
Yes. And you touched on it a little bit there, and you also touched on it a little bit earlier, the role of practice. And one of the things that it seems to me is that people are often aware they should do more with their body. Yep. They're aware when they do, they feel better, and yet they struggle to develop that consistency with it. And I don't know if there's anything you can say around perhaps the importance of that practice and also what supports developing that. Yeah,
so I mean, if anyone's coming at it from a point of view of I should do this like it's a chore, that's probably not going to be helpful. I mean, finding the joy in it would be you know, there's a meditation where you just look for pleasure in your body, pleasure meditation. That's one I give people that are struggling to learn to meditate. This is all mindfulness based, right?
Yeah,
so like meditation's a foundational practice. Long-term students in our year course, for example, like, you know, as they sign up for the course, meditating every day for the year is a requirement of signing up, just because it's a foundational practice for feeling. Though meditation can be dissociative for some, but that's another story.
More kind of transcendental kind of paths.
Yeah. Or even just mindfulness of breathing. If you're just focusing on the breath, you're ignoring the rest of the body. Yeah. So while the vast majority of meditation is embodied, it can also be used as a way to kind of get away from this
kind of bypass.
Yeah, we can talk about that in another interview maybe. But what was the question?
So the question was in terms of what supports, why practice is important, and what supports.
No, what supports practice? So first of all, understanding, having a good for the sake of what, as one of my teachers says, is important. Like, okay, why am I doing this? Like, what's actually driving me? What's motivating me? You're looking at behaviour change though, right? So communities of support are very important. I know when we do courses where people do things together, they're much more successful. Accessibility and ease is a big one, you know, for a lot of people. Sometimes it's as simple as like reminder systems, obviously having a coach and support of someone that can do that. But usually when people have a sense of, you know, what the body matters, and then they find a way of exploring that in a way they enjoy, right. That it doesn't need to be a chore. You know, like I did Aikido last night, I'll do yoga tomorrow, but it's like, I want to go. I find, for me now, there's real joy in that. So I'm not hitting myself with a stick to do my daily practice. Yeah,
it strikes me maybe if someone's not found something that they enjoy, they've not found the right thing.
Yeah,
is that right?
When I'm working with coaches, one of the things I do is just let them be aware of the range of stuff. We're so lucky in the modern world. Like in Brighton or London or any of the big cities of Europe, you know, and you know the US too. There's just so much out there of practices. You know, there's 20 different kinds of yoga any night of the week in Brighton. I mean, you know, Brighton's a little bit alternative, but even in, I don't know, Birmingham or Hull or whatever, there'll still be a range of things that are possible. So like when I work with coaches, like because people usually come from their kind of perspective of I do yoga or I do tango or whatever. You know, the tango teacher comes on our course and we suggest they do karate. You know, the karate teacher comes on the course, we say go do tango and learn about some of the range of things that exist. Because, you know, I did Aikido for years and it was great around centering and blending and, you know, posture, but I didn't learn much about emotions. I didn't learn much about music. I didn't learn much about sexuality. And, you know, you go to a tango class and those 3 areas are like, bam, in your face, you know. So different things are best explored through different practices.
Yes.
Though, with the corporate clients, sometimes I just make it really easy for them. I'll say, right, one thing we do, a real simple tool with coaches, is to get people walking differently.
Okay.
So we've all experienced different states, different ways of walking in our lives, and we just get them to walk around the room differently. And then it's like, okay, you've got a 5-minute walk from your tube stop to your office every day. You're doing that anyway, so this takes 0 minutes, because you're already doing that 5-minute walk. So every day that becomes your practice. I mean, your practice can be how you chop vegetables. Your practice can be, how you make the tea. Your practice can be linked to something like every time you wash your hands, you just notice your body, like throughout the day.
I really like that, just the simplicity of tying it to something that already happens. That's very clever.
Yeah, that a blended practice where you tie it to something can be very helpful. But then with more in-depth students, the exclusive practices can also be powerful as well. Because like when I go to Aikido, that's all I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's an hour and a half. That's what I'm doing. And I'm intentional. I remind myself at the beginning of the practice, what am I doing here? And at the end of practice, okay, what have I learned? What am I bringing back? What am I taking out? And this is where I think you can even fine-tune. A lot of the Eastern arts aren't very good at that, actually. They're not very good at being clear going in, and certainly in the application, how it gets into life. Like, okay, you do yoga, great. How do you do yoga while you're texting? Like most yoga classes, you don't get your mobile phones out, right? Why not? Like, why not? If you want to be body aware, if you want to maintain a simple posture, like a simple standing.
I'm going to put you in touch with one of my teachers, because I would be very grateful if I'd be able to use my mobile phone when I'm retreat.
I mean, there are reasons why you might not want to in certain parts of the class, right? But in terms of integration,
I'm with you.
Like, if I was running a meditation retreat on the last day, I'd say everyone get their laptops out.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if you can be Martin Elwood. I know you had a show. We were wanting to do this, and it was interesting. There was a lot of resistance from the kind of community of meditators, because people wanted to.
That's bad. This practice is spiritual. That's not.
And this is a holiday. This is my spiritual holiday from life, and I know conscious too. The whole thing is about in life.
Right.
So how do we be embodied at a computer? And technology is not neutral.
Yes.
The technology we're in shapes us. One of my teachers, Paul Linden, jokes that chairs are tools of political oppression.
Say that again.
Chairs are tools of political oppression. Clothes certainly are. It's kind of a joke, but there's something in it.
For our second interview, we should be sat on the floor naked.
Yeah, well, we could be. I mean, we're structured by how we are. So we're in certainly a higher ceiling. If we were growing up in very high ceilings, like we were rich, that has a certain embodiment.
Sure.
If we'd grown up in the Brazilian favela, where I used to work, and there's a lot of people everywhere, and it's ceilings are low, that creates a different feeling.
Yes.
Different way of being. That's what embodiment means, just the way of being and how that lives in the body. Technology. If I look down, do I feel more happier or depressed? For me, it's just associated with sadness. If I narrow my eyes, that's different from if I have wide vision. So every time I look at a little screen and I do this motion, so in Laban movement analysis, this is called sudden, direct, and fast. They have a way of analyzing movement, like notating movement, like you notate music. This kind of movement is patterning my system.
Interesting. I wonder what that movement is. It's like swiping an iPhone.
So this is a different patterning. And if you did it with your whole body, you'd realize, you'd get a sense of how that might pattern you differently, right? So sitting at a computer all day long, that is going to pattern you in a certain way. So technology and embodiment is another area I'm very interested in.
Well, we're pretty much out of time, just maybe in the last minute or so. What's the potential? What you're talking about here, I think, for many people holds great potential. Yes. I wonder what perhaps one way of answering your question might be, what's it meant for your life? You talked about kind of how you came to this. I'm wondering what effect these practices have had for you.
I mean, the simple answer would be freedom. There's a greater range of possibility, less kind of habitual, just doing the pattern. If you look at integrally the I, the we, and the it, so in the I would be more about kind of subjective feeling and the different states, wisdom, happiness, whatever it is. Yes. The we is certainly like opening up relationship potential very differently. And the it is just effectiveness, like getting more done.
Yes.
We've all read the books on time management, but if you've got a body that's all over the place or too particularly, too kind of narrow, that's going to really stop you achieving things in your business or whatever it is. So I'd say the I, we, and the it are usually the three main areas. For me, though, it's really just about being human. I look at the inhuman possibilities of a world where people are so lacking feeling that they're not empathizing. We treat ourselves, each other, and the planet the same, right? So if we're disembodied, we're not feeling ourselves, we're brutalizing ourselves, that's likely to be how we'll treat other people and the planet. So I think the alternative is, on the one hand, we've got sort of, war and torture and environmental destruction and just misery and addiction. On the other hand, I don't want to set this too loftily, but just being a human being. So that's the potential, I would say.
Sounds good. Mark, for now, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for watching, and we look forward to talking with you again here on Conscious Tea very soon. Bye-bye.